Secretary Treasurer. So moved. Second.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor?
I'm okay with it.
Okay, Janice votes in favor. That's unanimous. Thank you. Our condolences to you, Ron. Have a motion. Janice, do you have an agenda in front of you?
Janice, do you have an agenda?
I have the agenda and I'm okay with it.
Okay, so we'll have a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved. Second, any discussion? Tom?
I would like the chair to consider removing the code of conduct item. While I'm appreciative of style points for manipulating the agenda to get an item on that was previously defeated.
Okay, I'd like to stop you there, Trustee Weber. Please don't use inflammatory language.
I would like you to remove the item since it's an item that's been talked about before, and my understanding of board process, it can only be brought forward by somebody who was in the majority previously. In the absence of removing it, then I just want to get some assurance that other trustees would have equal access to bringing documents to the board, just as you have, to encourage their counterparts to consider items that may have been defeated in the past.
Okay, so procedurally what you're doing is requesting that the board consider removing this item from the agenda for this evening's meeting.
Correct.
So what we'll do now is vote on that. It requires unanimous consent to remove it from the agenda. Okay? So all those in favor of removing this item from the agenda? Tom?
I'm voting support. I will support the removing the item.
Removing the item from the agenda?
Yes, please.
Okay. Those opposed? Okay, and so that will remain on the agenda. Thank you. Anyone else have anything with respect to the agenda this evening? Okay, so we'll vote on the agenda as it stands then. All those in favor? Janice, and all those opposed? Janice, how do you vote on that?
I'm not going to vote either or. I'm abstaining.
Okay, so with respect to the agenda, then we have trustees McDonald. Janice, there's background noise there. Could you please move somewhere that's quieter? Janice.
Okay, I'll be with you guys in a second. Give me a minute here.
Okay, we have trustees McDonald and Caden abstaining, trustee Weber voting against, and trustees White, Goldberg, McClellan. I'm not good with last names here. I'm very used to, I'm just going to use first names and me voting in favor of adopting the agenda. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the code of conduct. I had first thought to bring this forward for a few reasons. One is that I have heard, well, in particular, trustees McDonald and trustee Caton speaking at board meetings when others are not present, that it's important for them that items are brought forward and all board members to be able to consider them. And I know that when we originally considered this item a few months ago, Trustee McClellan was not able to be with us that evening due to a family emergency. So there were only 6 of us here to consider this. And so the motion was defeated at that time. I thought that perhaps we had progressed in our relationships here and our difficulties that I thought we had had for a temporary time last December, so that we could again consider this item for a code of conduct, and that this would be a legacy that we could leave for the next board. We're only going to be together until November, and at that time we're going to be turning this over to a group of 7 different people, I would suspect. So I thought that this would be a prudent time for us to review that decision we had made. I'm just going to stop for a minute. Janice?
Yes?
There's quite a bit of background noise there. Could you please move somewhere so that it's not...
I'm actually going to move in a minute here. Just give me a second. I'll turn my mute button off so I can listen to you guys. But you guys can hear me and I'll speak when I want to speak. I'll turn my mute button on so you guys can't do background noise.
Super. Excellent. Thank you. So I think that we have shown this year, for the first part of the year, that we've worked actually well together to get a lot of different business done. But I suspect that, as with any organization, it's a good idea to have something like a code of conduct in place for when things get a bit rocky. My search on the internet shows that a code of conduct is just a set of rules outlining the responsibilities or proper practices for an individual or an organization, and many different places have these things in place. And I think that we certainly could have used that in December, and I know on the previous board we certainly could have used a code of conduct. And so I thought that at this point it might make sense for us to review that decision and give at least Trustee McClellan an opportunity to speak to this. I know that that's important to Trustees McDonald and Caton, that everyone has a voice on issues. And so I thought I would bring it forward this evening. I had originally intended to bring forward a motion to rescind our original decision, but upon researching that, I find that I can't make a motion to rescind because it was not decided in the affirmative. So I respectfully ask that the 3 trustees who voted against this motion consider bringing forward a motion to reconsider, and I would like to hear if others have any thoughts on this at this time. Well, Corinne?
Yeah, I'll speak to it. As I was the missing trustee, I was actually kind of surprised when the code of conduct didn't pass because I can't think of an institution that doesn't have a code of conduct, including the military and many of our schools. In fact, Cumberland Elementary right now is currently working on a code of conduct that they presented to the PAC last night, and it's a lovely pamphlet that every student will be required to sign, and it's really just guidelines on what behavior is expected and what the consequences may be for misbehaving, or although misbehaving isn't the term I use because it's all a positive document, for unexpected behavior. And I think codes of conduct are probably not necessary for most situations, but it's during the difficult times when emotions are riding high that a code of conduct can really come in handy. And I just think it's kind of an important thing to have.
Sheila?
I'm not prepared to introduce that motion at this time because I don't think that the timing is right. I'm not convinced that it's necessary. We did look at it before, but I think our staff are really busy with many priorities. I think we have received some other information that bears on the discussion about codes of conduct, some recommendations. We have Robert's rules. We have our own bylaws that speak to this in some areas. We have our values and beliefs up behind us, and I think that that is enough to guide us for now, and I don't want to bring up this motion at this time or direct staff to take on an extra task, which I don't feel is a priority at this time until we as a group have had a chance to have more discussion ahead of time for governance. And I would have said that in terms of how I think we could proceed with bringing that forward. We can work together to achieve certain goals, but I don't want to make that motion right now.
Thank you. Fran?
And since I brought this originally, I still hold the same view, and I don't find this complex or a contentious issue. So continue to be somewhat surprised at the fact that it is. I think if we require codes of conduct for our students, and some of our staff, depending on the organizations they belong to, are also bound by codes of conduct, then I think we should have one that governs everyone. And I would just hope that support or lack of support for such a thing is provided or not provided for the right reasons.
Thank you. Tom?
some clarification from you, Madam Chair. Are we debating code of conduct? We don't have a motion. So while I'm appreciative of two of my colleagues' comments, it feels like a debate around code of conduct. So just your ruling on that, please.
People are making comments on this item. Would you wish to comment further?
No.
No. Sherry?
I'll wait. I was going to ask a point of clarification, but I'll wait because I agree that would be appropriate for that. I think.
Go ahead. I don't have anyone else on the speakers list, so go ahead and ask your question.
My clarification is that in previous discussions about this, and then again tonight, I just wanted to clarify that if this motion did come back, and the only way it can come back is, as you say, from the 3 trustees, I have been reading this as a School District 71 Code of Conduct, and I think I just heard a trustee say that that's a code of conduct that encompasses everyone, and I think for the most part, and this is my clarification, the tenor has been about this code of conduct for trustees and senior staff and how we work together. So have I missed something, or were we looking at a School District 71 Code of Conduct for the entire district, everyone?
My recollection, and I'm going back to the original item that came before the board and what we debated in, I think it was January, was for the entire district. I believe that maybe Fran can clarify, since she was the one that brought this forward.
Originally, even though this is just for clarification and it's irrelevant because we're not actually, it was an overarching code of conduct analogous to the Toronto District School Board Code of Conduct with an additional, more specialized code for the trustees specifically attached. So it was both.
And
Well, my question is, do we not have a code of conduct for the employees in the district?
very many of our groups, from individual schools, all schools are legislated to have a code of conduct, safe and caring code of conduct. And we have, as I think somebody alluded to, we do have various organizations, you did, Brian, just now. Teachers that have their own code of conduct, we're bound by our own, sometimes they call it ethics, sometimes they call it conduct, but we all have governing organizations for the most part that do, as does the trustees. The SDA has some professional standards that they talk about. I wanted to understand the bigger picture. The task is different in weaving in all of those existing codes of conduct to an overarching umbrella piece. I'm not saying it's just different. I'm not sure it's more difficult or not. It's just different. And then if there's, I wasn't sure about the tenor of most of the conversation I've heard is about trustees and senior staff. So I wasn't sure where that was, and if from your recollection it's attached to an overarching umbrella.
Janice,
Yes.
are you able to hear everything that we're saying here?
I can hear you. I could not hear Sherry, and I did not hear Fran.
Okay, then we have a difficulty here because Janice can't fully participate in the meeting. I don't know. Is there another way for us to position the phone or move it?
And I'll do this. I'll speak
Hang on a second. Give me a second. I'm going somewhere where it's more quieter. I was in an area that I had really bad reception. So just give me 30 seconds while I go catch an area that is actually more conducive to this. Okay.
We're at the end of a technical thought.
And really, truly, I feel like I'm circumventing, like you haven't had, I'm debating, I'm adding to a debate, and I shouldn't be.
If she's somewhere near a computer, she can go onto the website and
Listen to us.
listen
She's
to it
on
that
Space
way.
Needle,
She's on
apparently.
Space Needle.
34 kids.
One of them's good.
Are you there, Janice?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, I have nothing to say, other than the fact that I was quite surprised to see this on the agenda, especially when you want myself to make a motion. So at this time, not willing to support it. Willing to discuss a later date, but I will not make a motion to reconsider.
Okay, thank you everyone for your consideration. As with other items that have passed in the past, I'm disappointed that you don't see things my way, but I will live with that. Everyone, if they all thought the same way as me, I think we'd be in big trouble. That's why we have boards of education with diverse opinions, so thank you for that.
Bring it
Okay.
back in the January board meeting.
Yeah, it might be an idea, and maybe even the December board meeting to bring this back, or January next year, you're right. Okay, we'll move on now to calendar. Sherry?
To you, Madam Chair, with your permission, at the last, I've been referring to it as part one of the April meeting. There had been a request for some additional information, and a briefing note was prepared, and with your permission, I'd like to ask Jeff Taylor to present that to you.
Your call.
Yep, although I have to ask you if you're okay about that.
No, it's your call.
Jeff, could you please present?
At the last meeting, I was asked to provide an accounting of what the anticipated costs were for looking at a
Trustee into the
two-week
audience.
spring break option. In consultation with the Secretary Treasurer, the Director of Finance, the Director of HR, and the Director of Operations, I've provided that information in an attachment. It's simplified because we're not anticipating additional costs. We are anticipating some savings around operations and potentially savings in salary, but we're not trying to put savings in salary. In fact, we're making allowances for any potentiality for lost salary to be covered. So the budget sheet reflects there'll be no gains in salary and minimal gains in operations as a result of considering the city's options.
Anyone have any questions? Does anybody want to make a motion? Or do you have questions, Fran?
Just under the sheet that says certain things would need to happen, in the event that there was a vote for a 2-week spring break, would that have to be subject to these things happening? And so we'd need to make the motion subject to...
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah,
Green?
Okay, so I know you simplified it, but really, I'm not really familiar with unions, sorry. So when you ask them to bank hours, what does that mean exactly?
If they, present circumstances would have them, some members, 10, 11th month employees, and only some of those, would stand to lose 3 days. However, there is an allowance for people to bank time, which means if they work extra hours, they save that time, it goes into a bank, that they can apply for days that they don't work. One of the affected groups, for example, is admin assistants. They frequently have a need to bank time because they frequently work beyond their work day. And we anticipate no difficulty at all for those people to acquire the 24 hours that they need to completely recover any costs that they might have lost by having a 2-week spring break, as an example.
I have one more question. Would ESPA employees be guaranteed the same protections if there were some employees that aren't included under QP and CBTA?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can answer that. The reason they're not included is because their personal service contracts are profoundly different. And they're salaried employees, so the number of days that they work in a month are not in play because they're not paid by the days or hours that they work per day. So they're not. A 2-week spring break or a 1-week spring break doesn't change either their working hours or their pay.
Sheila?
I would like to thank the calendar committee for its work, especially taking to heart the concerns that we had last time.
Can you
about-
speak up so Janice
about
can hear you?
consultation, and I would like to move that we adopt the recommendation of the calendar committee.
Second.
What is that?
It was for the 2 weeks comparison.
Is it option B? Jeff?
Simplify it, just make a motion to adopt a 2-week spring break subject to the conditions of the employee groups.
It's simple to accept their recommendation. So they didn't make a recommendation, they presented two options?
They presented
Very well.
various options.
Thank you.
So are you okay with?
Yes.
Is there anyone against the motion that Danny has just stated?
Could you say it again, Danny?
Or anyone against debating the motion Danny just stated?
To adopt the 2-week spring break, subject to the approval of the employee groups to participate.
They did in fact recommend 2 weeks spring break. So
Janice?
we're all in agreement.
Janice, you're got a lot of noise going on there. Thank you. Okay? Anyone like to second that? Sheila will second it. Okay, I'll open it for debate.
Well, I think it's quite clear on the information we received that the majority of the participants were in favor of the 2-week spring break. So, like I said, I was in favor of it last year, but it was unsuccessful. So, I'm proposing to see if it works this year. So.
I concur with Trustee White and have nothing else to add.
Thank you for your concurrence. Anyone else wish to speak down this end? Green?
And I too will say that I'm really impressed with the way that the feedback went this year. I think you did an outstanding job on that, Jeff, and I can't imagine how you came up with those pie graphs and all the overlating you had to do.
Alan Douglas showed him.
Well, thank you, Alan, as well then. And that was one piece of the pie for me, and I think I said it last year as well. For me, there are really like 3 parts to this pie, and the other piece is financial for me. And from what you've demonstrated here, it looks like it's not going to cost the district any money. And the third piece for me was about the vulnerable students in our district, and, well, any student in our district for that matter. So for me, the question still arises, what about, have we talked to the rec centers to see if they're able to offer programs during that time, or what about the kids who can't afford to go to those programs? Are we going to offer them something, anything for those kids whose parents, maybe both parents work, and they're still little kids that, need to be looked after?
So through you, Madam Chair, and I'll just, we've had those initial conversations, and they're simply waiting for the go-ahead, like we said, we engage them in initial conversations, and they do have resources that they can bring to bear as well. They're waiting to know whether or not this is a go, and then if it is, we'll be connecting back with them. They can start their planning and expand what they normally offer during the 1-week spring break. They themselves have some special funding for families that are in need, and we have been open to what we can do as well. So everyone has had that conversation. We're waiting to see what the decision of the trustees are, and if it is to move to this option, we will do everything we can to support our community partners.
Am I still there, people?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, for some reason my video is all of a sudden you guys just went down. I think I heard everybody talking, so either
This isn't working well.
my phone
She's
was
doing
there,
her best.
or not, but I'm curious if you guys keep taking it out.
Okay. Just hang in there, Trustee Caton. We'll do our best.
Now I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, it's because I'm yelling. It's always good. Not for everybody else, but it's good for you. I'll use my teacher voice. So we are committed to doing what we can, and we have already begun those conversations.
Anyone else wish to speak to this? Well, for me, I feel like I'm in a bit of a quandary here. I think that there's a number of people in the district that have supported this. There's also a number of people in the district who don't support this. And I feel that it is the board's responsibility to ensure that the needs of all families are looked after, not just the people with the loudest advocates. So I do have a concern with respect to vulnerable families. I think that a win-win situation would be is that if we had CUPE employees that could run some kind of a day program for us for 2-week spring breaks, that maybe we might be able to have spring breaks for 2 weeks for many years to come. That would make sure that employees don't lose out on any work, and it would make sure that families at a nominal cost could participate in some kind of spring break program. So there's my concern with regards to vulnerable families. With respect to the way this has evolved, I have a difficulty also and a bit of a quandary with respect to how this is bargained. The judge very clearly said that the contract provisions that were stripped from the teacher's contract, that was illegal. Section 78.1 in the School Act that gives the school board jurisdiction to override teacher contracts and make changes to contracts has been ruled illegal by the judge, and there's, I know, a year in which to get this fixed, but I don't know what the fix is going to be. I don't know if teachers can be compelled to come back to work at the end of August. What if they don't want to come back to work at the end of August to do their Pro-D? So I have a number of concerns that I think can't be answered now, but I think that I do not want to stand in the way of the board, and so I think that the only thing I can probably do is just to abstain from voting on this. I'll let my colleagues take this because they have more comfort with this than I do. Did you want to say something? Or?
Well, I could clarify the Bill 28 piece, but really, and maybe I can share that the legal opinion and the BCPC opinion that we have to date, which is what we move ahead on, the Ministry of Ed and us, is that this is not in play for September, Bill 28, whatever that resolution is, that we would not be acting against the spirit of the judge. There was a deliberate the decision to leave it for a year and hoping that it would get resolved at a provincial table. And I think both the TF and BCPC are hoping that that will happen as well and are moving towards that. At current, as of yesterday, 43 of 60 school districts across the province are engaging in a 2-week spring break for next school year. And they have had the same kind of advice that we have, that there would be the Bill 28 would be in play for teachers deciding if they were coming back in August or not. And if for some reason we were in some kind of labor dispute in August, there are greater powers than ours that would be dealing with that. That would be at the TF level, the BCPC level, and then probably the Labor Board at that point in time. So I would hope that I could reassure you that Bill 28 doesn't need to be a factor in this conversation. This time next year could be a very different story, because it will be a year. It will be the year will be up, and hopefully the whole Bill 28 piece will have been resolved, and the direction set by either the province or by the arbitrator who has said that the judge who will rule and remedy will be clear enough for us to understand whether or not there's an impact on a 2-week spring break. But I would like to assure you that every advice that we have, and certainly the other 43 districts in the province, are that this wouldn't be a factor in the decision about a 2-week spring break at this point in time.
I understand that. I think, as I said last time, that I personally would want to live within the spirit of what the judge has decreed, and that is that school boards don't implement calendars that haven't been properly bargained, that has been wrong for the last 10 years, as the class size and composition piece has been wrong for the last 10 years, and so that needs to go to a bargaining table and not an edict issued. Sheila?
I think that I'm quite comfortable at this point that the CDTA is participating on the committee, and that we've done a good job of having participation from our partner groups in there, and that some of the desire for a 2-week break in terms of the wellness issues have been put forward to us, and that are supported, and that I'm really looking forward to seeing what that early planning process looks like, and how that will help our schools and the teachers as well to get off to a really good start. So I'm comfortable with that. As far as the issue about the parents, I agree, and last year was very concerned about parents in lower income areas, but I felt that the survey this year, parents did have a variety of ways to respond, by phone, computer, a variety of ways. We didn't see that. I do think parents will cope, but I agree that there could be some other measures, but my sense is that out-of-school programs need to be properly run and licensed, and so we might start talking through the community school model about how we can start to put more of those in place. But I don't think that that's something that we can really, I know that we can count on our staff to identify high needs, but that it wouldn't be something that I would hold back from making this decision for this year. But I'm looking forward to working on it with you in the future.
In a neighborhood school model.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We're together.
That's how you address
Anyone
that
else?
sort of problem.
Okay, so, Dan?
Well, I guess to allay your concerns about the unions and particularly the teachers, My understanding is the CDTA and the BCTF are the bargaining agents for the teachers in this district. And one of the conditions is that they would have to make certain agreements with the board in order for this to happen. So if they don't make that agreement, then this does not happen for 2 weeks.
And with that, the closure, could you read back the motion, please, Debbie?
That the board adopt 2 weeks spring break subject to the approval of the employee groups.
Okay, everyone's clear on the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Janice, how do you vote? Janice, how do you vote? Okay, so we'll record that as carried. Trustees in favor, White, Weber, heck with it,
Everybody
Fran,
except
Sheila,
Barr.
Corrine. I have abstained, and I guess Janice has abstained. Okay. Thank you.
I just had a question. So when you say subject to approval for the partner groups, just
That's QPCDTA.
All these things that
Requirements
they
that are on
need.
the conditions.
Yeah, because there's no mechanism for them to approach you with that, and we would assume that that the committee made the recommendation with their representation. And I'm thinking what you're thinking is unless there's been a significant change from them in direction, right? Is
Well,
that
I
what
would
you're
expect
looking for?
some form of approval from the
Some kind
CDTA and QP at least.
And would you like it in writing? Is that what you're saying?
this is what
Preferably,
I
yes.
Is a thumbs
You're
up or
voting.
not?
What I just wanted to clarify, and then you can tell me if that means that there's the intention. Partner groups for me is general, where we're talking about both unions, and they would be yes, it would be in writing. Yes, it would be conditional to this situation, this situation, this situation, to ensure that it's cost neutral and nobody loses anything.
And you would include ESPA and their approval. I mean, you can't hold whether or not it affects them or not. It affects their practice, so you would get some kind of head nod from ESPA and the Principal Vice Principal Association.
Okay, so I was not going to have the same type of conditions that
It's not about the conditions, but it would be unfair for them all to have participated in this, I think. You would need some kind of head nod from them.
I would suspect our process will look differently next year, and we'll see how that evolves. Just depends on what they do with the School Act. Alrighty. Move on to Superintendent's report.
Actually, it is not my report. I'm going to turn over item D, emergency preparedness, to our district principal of health and safety, Paul Berry. He's affectionately known as the king of disaster. And he certainly,
The master of disaster.
certainly would have a much better presentation than I would.
I didn't know I was under there.
We just say it when you're not around very often. And you're up against some fairly tough competition because Alan had a PowerPoint in education committee. So, it's technology that's needed.
You lose her entirely?
I don't know. Are you there at all, Janice?
We're trying to find
Hope the
I
needle
think
didn't
she's
fall.
there.
Well, I didn't have these troubles when I was presenting.
Maybe she's trying to talk about it.
Could you help maybe, Alan?
Well, we were just having a little sidebar here about whether we should have voting cards on who has the best PowerPoint tonight. Although I don't think we could ever do
No.
better than yours,
No,
ever.
that would hurt my feelings.
Well, no, probably Paul's, because clearly.
Or Josh's.
you know.
Okay, we can do that.
Well, you guys
Josh.
gotta know, Josh Porter gave me so much help.
That's good. I'm glad you're learning how to do this stuff. It's
There you
great.
go.
No, it looked really good.
And it's not like I get a lot of motivation from my colleagues that I would,
It was lovely.
When you taunt and jeer at somebody who's learning a new skill, you can undermine their whole self-esteem.
they always are.
You just have to learn
Only
to
Sheila
praise
says
them.
that my technological skills, she's been impressed with how hard I've been working at.
I'm glad.
I know you can do
You
that.
get
The others
a
just
G
kinda-
for good for effort there.
She's supposed to be my friend.
Oh, I can't
Josh
imagine.
did all of it.
You don't have any. Did he really? Are you technologically astute?
Esther?
Me?
Yeah. I'm thinking Alan
Yeah.
can do better than you, is my guess. Right?
I've made
I've done the old PowerPoint.
She did add PowerPoint once 20 years ago.
Okay, pay attention.
Okay, so I've struggled through without Alan's help. And what I'd like to do tonight is give you a sense of what my view is of our level of preparedness, and to give you a bit of a taste of some of the work we're currently doing in the district. I think to start with, if we don't have a plan, we are for sure going to fail, and fortunately we have a very good plan. The work that was done previously in the development of the Emergency Preparedness Manual was very solid work, maybe a little bit wordy and a little bit bulky to handle, but what is contained within the plan is excellent stuff, and so it's a great starting point. So we know what can happen here. This is Courtney Elementary in June of 1946. The third desk from the left was Alan's. Very good.
Lindsay, don't put that in the minutes, Lindsay. You just need to go in the paper.
So it can happen here, and significant damage when the chimney fell through the roof of the building here. Also, it happens here a lot. If you want to sleep at nights, not worrying about earthquakes, Saskatchewan and Manitoba are great places to live.
Except for all the water.
But if you're looking for Vancouver Island, it's under all those great big red dots, which show the significance of earthquake activity from 1985 to 2002, and most of those were greater than 6.5. So we live in earthquake country for sure. So we want to know, are we prepared for this? This is the wave coming ashore in Fukushima. Now we know that Japan was the most well-prepared earthquake jurisdiction, emergency preparedness in the world. And yet in Fukushima they had designated 11 zones for people to evacuate to in the event of an earthquake. And the people of Japan know that when the ground shakes, you don't wait for someone to tell you to go, you go. Of those 11, 8 of them were wiped off the face of the earth. So the best laid plans have to go up against Mother Nature. So we have work to do. In terms of our program so far, we have a considerable number of strengths. First of all sites have the materials that they should have. All sites have dedicated storage for earthquake and emergency preparedness materials. All our sites are in compliance with the number of first aid attendants that we should have, and have the equipment to support them. The parents have been incredibly supportive over the last many years in putting in huge effort to acquire supplies and to raise the funds to put supplies into schools. Not equitably across the district by any stretch of the imagination, but some schools, the parent advisory committees have worked very hard. I think we could say that elementary schools are generally well-resourced. The school district is well connected with the regional emergency preparedness program and committee, so we have lots of expertise there that can support us. And right now we have someone in me dedicated to this work for the next little while. So I think those are strengths that we do have. So here's some kids celebrating the fact that they have all the resources they need in their earthquake shelter for 72 hours. So areas we need to consider for improvement. Our secondary and junior schools are, for the most part, unprepared in two areas, both in terms of the resources they have and in terms of the training that staff has been involved in. Skill sets in areas such as commanding an incident of this magnitude, damage assessment, first aid, search and rescue are all limited across the board for our employees and management. The non-school sites, the board office and maintenance have few, if any, resources for training. I believe that senior district staff need training in incident command and we need to establish an incident command center that would operate out of the management location. Right now, our sites don't have a common set of resources or common language that we would use, and that's something we need to work towards. We have no emergency communication facilities. Once the power goes down and the cell phones, the BlackBerries die, all our schools are isolated from the district facilities. I believe our maintenance staff can be a really valuable resource for us, but training in light urban SAR would be valuable, as well as damage assessment. Ultimately, training is needed for all staff. So, over the last few weeks, really since the earthquake, first in Christchurch and then in Japan, schools have been a little bit more interested in looking at what they need to do. So we've been, and today I was at Puntledge this afternoon for about an hour and a half conducting an in-service, and we look at what they need in their school. And the learning intentions are to get the staff involved in a tabletop exercise that is all about their school. We look at their plans and the resources they have in place so people are aware of what they have and what they don't have. And then we identify specific strengths and weaknesses within each school. And this is the scenario that they're given. November 10th, 8.9 magnitude earthquake strikes the Courtenay area. Now, 9 was the magnitude that hit Fukushima. So it's not out of the question that it could be in that range, and that's certainly in the range that is predicted for this area. So I asked them to consider, it's November, what are the weather conditions that we're going to be experiencing, likely heavy rain, blowing. This is what we know of the Fukushima quake, that it was a very, very strong first sudden jolt and then considerable strong shaking throughout the schools, throughout any of the facilities. The shaking is violent. It's impossible to remain standing. And this quake, the initial quake, 7 minutes in duration. You know, what do we train our students to? 60 seconds is what we have been training for. Get under your desk and count for 60 seconds. So some pretty valuable lessons learned from these recent quakes. We know that, and I'll show you some pictures in a minute, that windows will explode, they'll shatter, the ceiling fixtures wobble and fall. Nothing remains on the ceilings. What might be on this side of the room is going to end up on the far side of the room. We do not conduct earthquake drills with fire alarms running, and we know that because of the vibration, the fire alarms are going to go off, so we need to practice as they might experience it, because what we train our kids to do is, as soon as the fire bell rings, is we get up and line up at the door and go out, which we don't want them to do. Power goes out, children, staff are going to be crying, upset, panicked. I didn't add the other one.
Oh, you did.
And the management team had said Alan was screaming like a girl.
You're just jealous because it's PowerPoints.
So then I asked the staff to think about what their immediate actions are within the classroom. And everyone to this point has said, well, we get under our desks and we count to 60. And then we have them line up. So we today reviewed the fact that that's not what we want them to do. We want the kids to remain under their desks. We want the teachers to very carefully check for risks within the classroom. Is it safe for the kids to come out from underneath their desks? And they should not come out until such time as it's considered safe. And it may be that they remain in their classrooms until some member of the staff, probably an administrator, will have had a chance to check to see that it's safe to come out of their classrooms and evacuate the building. Past procedures are we get out right away. That may not be the safest thing to do. We don't want anyone else hurt as a result of the evacuation, so we want to make sure that we have safe routes to exit the buildings. We talked about what their first priorities are. One is that they need to stay safe themselves because they can't help their children if they become injured. We review the drop, cover, and hold on, and we've added that we hold in place until it's safe to evacuate. We have considerable discussion around different theories of what to do in an earthquake, and we've discussed at length a theory called the triangle of life, which Every year, emails come out across the world that discuss the triangle of life as an alternate strategy to drop, cover, and hold on. I tell them that the strategy might work in places like Haiti, might work in third world countries where we don't have the types of construction standards that we have in Western Canada or Western Europe. The theory is that in structures with mud huts and so on, brick construction, the walls shake out and the ceilings come down, crushing everyone beneath. And that if you can be close to a wall when they do collapse, there can be a triangular space where you may have a chance of survival. We'll see in a moment that because of our structures and the construction standards we have, drop, cover, and hold on is exactly what we need to do. We do know that building collapse is going to be really rare in BC because of our standards. We know that most people are going to be injured as a result of falling objects, not because of being crushed or building collapse, and getting under something is the safest thing to do. We used to be told, and even at the last presentation I did, I had a number of people say, well, you go stand in the doorway. Absolutely the wrong thing to do. One, you won't be able to stand, and two, likely the doors are going to slam closed anyways, injuring you. So being underneath something is important. We also talk about what do you do about those large spaces, like gymnasiums, multipurpose rooms, music rooms, and the best strategy is to get out of those spaces because there is no place for protection. And you're going to have those ceiling fixtures as well falling. So this is Christchurch in September. And you can see that structurally the building is fine except for ceiling structures. We know the other realities that we're going to face. And this was both in New Zealand and in Japan, places like Mississippi during Katrina. Emergency services are immediately overwhelmed, or they go home to their families and are not available. Power is out, phone services are disrupted. Now, let's see if this one will actually work. This is a modern middle school in California that experienced a 8.4 earthquake. You call him Alan or Jeff.
I'm going to let Jeff help with this one. He needs to have a little bit of limelight. Jeff?
Open up the store.
To the rescue.
So what I'm trying to convince the staffs is that, one, they're going to be on their own, and the work that needs to be done in the school is theirs to do. There are not going to be police, fire, ambulance arriving at our school sites, certainly not in the early hours of these incidents, and it will be up to the staff to conduct all of the types of roles that those emergency responders that we would want them to do had they arrived, but we will be on our own. Because these classrooms are worth having a look at.
And I think, Paul, you were telling us at the principal's meeting is that 72 hours, which is what we've always said, is so extremely optimistic that people in Japan were waiting up to 7 to 9 days, and they were a country that was much more prepared or well prepared for this. So we've always thought that 72 hours would get help to us. We could get home to our families. We have enough water, whatever, for 72 hours. We probably have to rethink that. When you think of the amount of bridges that are in between us and larger communities, south and even north, no one can get to us. And we have maybe access to 4 or 5 helicopters in this area who would be triaging and working with people who are injured as opposed to airlifting food and water and supplies. So we probably really need to, I think Japan, terrible tragedy that was, has taught us that we really need to think just about everything we thought about how we're going to keep our kids safe, and also where they're all going to be, where we're going to keep them safe and contained, because we expect that the emergency folks are just going to be overwhelmed. At least if we can keep them safe and have them and hold them, while everything else is going on. That's the best way we can contribute as a school district. And the other piece is that in many of our rural schools, and not all, just rural, many of our rural schools, whether or not we expected them or not, there will be folks that will come to our schools for help. Most of our rural schools are the centers of those communities, Miracle Beach, the island schools, Cumberland. People are going to make their way to a large building like a school thinking that there will be help there. So we have to look after our kids, our staff, and various members of the community, because we certainly can't turn them away.
You'd like your commentary on this, Paul.
Okay. I'm not going to pay attention to me pause, but you might have to look at this twice. This is a relatively modern middle school in California. Have a look at the roof structures. This reminds me of Puntledge. With all the external doorways, and most of those doorways could not be opened because the roof structures came down and blocked the doors. And you can see the type of damage in the inside of the school. Again, it's mainly roof structures, tiles, lights, LCD projectors that have fallen, but it's pretty clear that underneath the desks, kids would be safe, staff would be safe. So this was 2010, 8.4 magnitude. So as teachers, they could expect to be coming up from underneath their desk or table in the classroom, but that's what they would be seeing. I've sent those to the teachers and asked them to share them with their students. This morning, or this afternoon in the conversation, one of the grade 1 teachers said, well, will I scare them? Probably. Absolutely. But I think that we need to prepare them to what the realities might be like in their classroom. Sure, they're going to be scared, and so are we. But the better we can prepare them, the better they can be aware of what they might face, probably the less scared they will be. So we're on our own. So all the schools have a plan, and not all plans go exactly as we envision them. So having lots and lots of resources and lots of practice is going to be able to help us to adapt to the situations that we're going to face. So each of the schools has to deal with and has the resources in our plan to deal with each of these things. How to command the incident, how to deal with first aid. We talk about conducting damage assessments, communications at a number of different levels, how to conduct search and rescue, safety, how to ensure the safety and security of the building and the students, how to look after shelter and caregiving, dealing with volunteer management, and how to safely release the students so we know who it is we're releasing the students to. So under the principal or the teacher in charge, the person who happens to be there that day and have to deal with this, these are the things that they're going to be responsible for. Establishing a location, coordinating, directing the work of all the other disaster task committees that I just mentioned. And this is a hard one, because for teachers, for administrators, they want to be doers. In this case, they can't be doers. They have to remain visible, they have to remain in their command location and conduct the operations. They can't be found, they can't coordinate. First aid. So the role of first aid is to provide basic physical and psychological first aid and provide triage. Now, each of our schools has 2 first aid attendants. Some have a few more, but 2 under WorkSafe. I was at Puntledge this afternoon, and so that's a 2 to 500 ratio. Pretty considerable. So what I've talked to the schools about is using the resources they have, and they have students. And so we will be, over the next year, training our grade 5s and our grade 6s in first aid. 1, it will keep them busy during the crisis, and 2, most of our injuries are going to be cuts and abrasions, bruises, and things like that, and they can be wonderful first aid attendants, leaving the more qualified first aid attendants to deal with the more serious types of injuries. Damage assessment. There is a course called Rapid Damage Assessment, and to date, we've given it to maintenance personnel, and we've given it to administrators. Our administrators are going to be dealing with the command aspects of these sorts of emergencies, so we need to be redundant in terms of the types of training we do. And so teachers, support staff also need to be made aware of these types of courses and participate in them so that they can do these roles. It's not about being a structural engineer. It's about looking for rooms that might be safe to reoccupy and looking at what sorts of damage tell you that they're not safe. Communications is absolutely critical. We've said that we have to document the actions we take within the sites, and we need to have communications from sites back to some sort of command structure here at the district level. So I'm currently pricing radios so that all sites can communicate with the district. You're going to have to conduct search and rescue in a methodical way, so we're going to have to teach staffs how to do that. Once emergency services do arrive at a site, they're going to want to know which rooms have been searched, where subjects might be, and so schools will have to work through a process of search and rescue, identifying the types of injuries that might be remaining in a classroom or bodies, whatever it might be, and being able to and ready to share that information in a systematic way with emergency services when they do arrive on scene. Today, one of the teachers said, well, the big yellow helicopter is just going to come, isn't it? There's 4 big yellow helicopters for British Columbia and the Yukon, of which 2 are serviceable at any given time, and they're going to be triaged like anything else. Likelihood, they're going to go to major centers like Vancouver rather than staying here. So these things have to be done by staff. They have to deal with shutting off the gas, cordoning off hazardous areas, making sure that entrance and exits, fire exits and entrances are controlled so that if emergency services can arrive, it's not blocked by vehicles and so on. And they might have to control small fires. If it's blowing and pouring on November 10th when this happens, they're going to want their building. And they have to consider shelter and caregiving. Now, last year, during emergency preparedness, we did a full evacuation of Royston Elementary, and they had practiced and practiced and practiced. And they had wonderful tarps and poles and guy lines to make shelters, and it was blowing this day, and all those poles and guy lines were of no use. So we talked to them about just taking that tarp and doing the same sorts of things you do with your classes every single year in PE with the parachute. They take it, they throw it up in the air, they pull it over their heads, and they sit down on instant shelter. It's a great way of containing your class, and simple is better. So they have to plan for basic survival for a considerable amount of time. We have supplies pre-positioned in many sites, but not all. They're going to have to deal with shelter, food, water, and sanitation. And lots of schools in the last few weeks have said, oh, we forgot about that. It's going to be an important one. This too, both these are important areas that have to be addressed. Schools are going to be inundated by members of the community and by parents. And if you haven't thought about and put a plan in place to deal with those emergent volunteers, then they're going to be more problem than they are going to be help. So this is something we'll be working on over the next year or two. And then we have a responsibility to care for each student who's at our school, and we have systems and the powers running to release our students. Each family designates 3 people that we can release a child to. If BCESIS is down, then we need other systems to be able to say, yes, you can go with this person, and to be able to record where those students have gone. And then, so some of the things that we're working on right now, just talked about the in-services and giving you a sample of what we've been doing. We have a common list of emergency supplies, and it's going to form the foundation of common resources in each school. These are kits that we're going to build at the district level and give to the schools. There will be an advantage in that if Ron is working at Marcusville this year and he's at Royston next year, he can go and get the search and rescue kit, and the same resources will be in each kit in each school. We need to initiate training in these areas, and we're looking at providers to provide some of this training right now. We need to increase the levels of first aid. 2 first aid attendants in each site is not going to be enough given this type of event. And we're going to continue coordinating our work with the Comarc Valley Emergency Program, and I've already talked with First Student Canada about what do you do if the quake happens when the buses are en route? So that's where we're at and what we're engaged in right now.
Thank you, Paul. It's much better than the 2 words. Thank you. And just to back to you, Madam Chair, just wanted to know if there's any more questions. And with your permission, what we'd like to do is continue to update the board, maybe quarterly in terms of where we are on both earthquake preparedness. And actually, really, truly, we've begun to believe that we probably should have Paul update you on a variety of other issues on a kind of a quarterly basis. It isn't just about emergency preparedness. Some reports around the work around WorkSafe BC and the things that the gains that we've made recently. We should probably find a forum to share that with you. So we'll talk with you in the future about your interest in having some kind of more regular report from the district principal of Health and Safety. But would like to follow this up with an offer to present back to the board over the next year or where we are in terms of some of the issues that he's brought forward.
I think actually that would be a fabulous idea. We added a position for Paul this year, and I think that would really be great and show some accountability with adding the position to the public to see the gains that we're getting. I think this is a fabulous gain for that position, and maybe we could even consider a motion this evening that the board receive quarterly reports from senior staff regarding WorkSafe BC and emergency preparedness.
And or other health
and safety issues.
Great.
So if anybody would be interested in making that motion, that would be great. Seconded. Okay. Anyone have any questions or comments? Or we do have a motion on the floor which we'll debate here. But Danny?
Well, just that picture of Courtney Elementary in 1946, it's not the current one. Because the current one was built in 1953, and no, I was not here.
For a trustee back then, Sheila?
I just thank you so much for your work on this, Paul and other staff. I just want to put forward to the rest of the trustees here and you that when originally made a motion regarding this, it was asking for some budget figures, because I really firmly believe that we need to, you've identified what we need to be doing, and so a sense of what will be the cost for training, what will be the cost for those supplies to bring every school to parity, and are we building it into our budget? And I was hoping the timing would work so that if funds need to be allocated within the current budget year, that we could get that and get that approved. Now, if it turns out that you guys are just doing it within repair and maintenance or, with staffing costs and we don't need to specify this, but my sense was if that we need to allocate additional funding for this, I wanted us to be aware of the concern and to be able to give you, based on what you're doing, give you that. So I'm not insisting that we have numbers if you're working it in, but one of the points for me that's really important is that I don't think, and I'm glad to see this reflected here, that I don't think that parents should be expected to be the ones who fill those seat cans. We know then that creates an inequity and leaves especially our seniors, our secondaries uncovered. I think it's great if they do the comfort kits for, that's a voluntary activity, and if they participate with the school team in managing. But I just don't think for us as a district to rely on parent fundraising to create preparedness is anywhere where we need to be. So I'm really pleased to see that this is the direction we're going, is to take our responsibility. But my questions then are you comfortable at the present time with being able to come up with the dollars needed to get us where we need to be?
So we'll direct that through Sherry to.
And I think if I could answer that with what I believe that if I, taking your direction now, and I didn't take that, we would have had this ready for this meeting if we had understood that. I could certainly, I need to go away and consult with my colleagues. I think what I would come back with is a hybrid proposal, which would be the things that we can find within existing budgets, and perhaps the places that we're going to be, we've already identified the places where they're going to have some difficulty finding funding outside of our operational budgets or our staff development budgets or whatever. So because there's staff development is a big, broad, encompassing thing, and we have many things we need to manage out of that budget. So with your permission, I will go back and speak with my colleagues, and I certainly could present to you at the next board meeting or the next, that would be the next board meeting, I guess. Something that I think would probably be a hybrid, where we wouldn't be asking for covering the cost, because we see our responsibilities in some of these, and when you accept that responsibility, you find that inside your operational budget. But there are some places where we will be struggling to find that money inside of our operational budget in competing interests with other things. So I could potentially bring back what we can find now and what we would hope to be able to either find from another pot, or that we just naturally go to the place that if it costs us this and we can find this much of it out of operations, we then phase things in over time. And some of that makes sense in terms of the logic of phasing in a large project like this. We can't do all of this next year, no matter how much money we might have or we could throw at it, because there's just a piece around an organization changing and shifting its both philosophy and its mandate around certain issues. So if you give me some time, I can come back with you and say to you, this is what we think we do, or we don't need any of it, but I suspect we'd come back with a hybrid.
Thanks. Anyone else like to say anything? So what's the motion that you've got there?
I'll just need clarification at the end. I've got the board receiving quarterly reports for work safety, emergency preparedness, and other
health and safety
issues. And I would take that as direction from the board. I would take a motion.
I'll probably just be nice and make
Okay,
that motion.
because I can
It's on the
do that.
floor, so. Okay, all those in favor? And Janice, are you there? I believe
think
she's
it
gone.
drops. It
I
probably
think she's
drops it
dropped.
when there's no activity back and forth. So she was more wanting to be on record for the first two debate.
Okay.
So I think she's probably on. There's no point trying her again.
So that is carried unanimously, and I think we should make a notation in the minutes that Trustee Caton is no longer part of the meeting at this point. We don't know when she left. Thanks.
Left the building.
Like Elvis.
In this case, in this case.
Elvis has left the building.
So thank you very much for your report. Sherry, continue on with Superintendent's report.
I would turn this over to Assistant Superintendent Sheila Shanahan, speaking, I think, and perhaps with Director of Finance's help, to the establishing a charitable foundation to support public ed.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The board requested an ad hoc committee to do some work on finding some information out about charitable foundations. And so Trustee McPennell and Ron Amos and myself met, and the first time we just basically reviewed, as you can see there, what we're doing now in terms of bursaries and awards. And it varies. We have there is quite a sum of money that's managed for bursaries and awards and held in the district, but different people impact the selections of those and when those payments are made. At that meeting, determined how we would sort of find out and collect this information for you. And I won't read it all, but basically we contacted other school districts. We contacted a neighboring school district to the executive director of a foundation. So we did secretary, treasurer, executive director, and then we contacted also post-secondary and got some feedback from them and provided to their sort of some graded research material that Ron Amos found for our consideration. So we met again and basically sort of summarized for you the information that we found. Essentially, at this time, there's considerable costs involved to start a foundation, and there actually are staffing implications. We found that districts that have them actually had to provide considerable staff hours to the management of a foundation. And so we've sort of summarized and said, that perhaps we should continue with our current practice, but perhaps to augment that we might do similar to a neighboring district and perhaps have something on our website that sort of speaks and does a communication strategy around how people can provide bursaries or awards or provide endowments for school district activities. So that's the sum of the information that we brought forward to you and have completed the work as requested.
Thanks. Anyone have any comments or questions? Sheila, do you have anything to say? You said on the committee?
Yeah, I did. I'm really appreciative working with you. It is a substantial task. We do have a capacity and a good way to manage funds, but I think that we could do a better job or expand that in terms of how people can make donations. But it can be done with the existing structure and just through communication, and I think that's something staff could work on. I feel like at this time, eventually, I think to see that part of our operation increase, you then get to a point where you know it's the right time, and I agree entirely that it's good early at this point. Yeah, thank you. It's good.
Anyone else? Just a question, this isn't on the agenda, but how did you find the process of having a ad hoc committee, a small focus group to talk about an item of interest? Is that an effective way to flesh out things that the board is interested in, or do you think?
I think the results are there. We sort of met together and then did our own work and then came back together, and it was a very focused topic. I thought it was a very effective way to work and to provide you with some considerable information back that we might look again at in the future, but certainly is there now collected.
Good. Thank you very much. I know the Aboriginal Education Committee, they operate on a consensus model, and sometimes if there's a thing where people don't agree on, it wasn't the case here, but they have a focus group, get together with different people and talk about things, and I've often wondered if maybe that sort of thing wouldn't benefit us more if we use that more.
Well, it's important that in our case, we knew exactly what you were asking.
Yeah.
And that's obviously from any time that you ask management for information, sometimes you're trying to weed out the information that they're asking us, or looking for, or whatever. Certainly in this case, we knew expressly what you wanted.
Yeah.
And so once you can narrow down that kind of definition, it certainly helps our job when it comes to being able to give you the information that's required and that you're looking for. So it was very good.
I did have some conversations with people in the community who were interested in supporting it. I managed to miss the meeting, so it's not all reflected in here. I carried on and I adapted. But some of that feedback was really positive, and I think that a general sense of interest in the community in supporting the school district in a variety of ways if those opportunities are there. And particularly our music or some other specific fields. We saw that coming forward from the engineers around robotics. And so I feel like there's opportunities within the structure we already have to celebrate those things and get the information out.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for your work. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Okay. Policy Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The minutes from our April 4th meeting are before you. Before I turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Sheila Shanahan to talk to the briefing note, I do want to just say a couple things. One is a hearty thanks to, in particular, Sheila and district staff and certainly my trustee colleagues as well as partner groups on this particular item alone. It's been something that's been before at Policy Advisory for some time, and it is not quite a line-by-line examination. To some degree, it's close. I'm quite pleased on behalf of the committee to bring it back before the board. I also note that the recommended motion that's listed in the minutes versus the recommended motion that's listed in the agenda is different, and while I certainly respect that trustees can make whatever motion or not that they choose, I think of the two, the one that's in the agenda more accurately reflects what we're trying to capture. So, with that, Sheila.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So there is a considerable number of student travel forms, and so I too commend the partner groups and the trustees on the committee for their stick-to-itiveness, because it was quite a considerable amount of work. Probably some of the, really the only contentious issue was around waivers. And of course, we, over the course of several meetings, contacted risk management and insurance providers, and were sort of told that if we were going to remove the waivers from any of our travel forms, we've only had waivers on high-risk activities like snowboarding, downhill skiing, those sorts of things. And so these student travel forms actually reflect no waivers. They have become now an acknowledgement of risk, and we did seek a legal opinion around those pieces as recommended by risk management. And legal opinions, there's someone on the committee who can read them much better than I can, but we know that in that legal opinion it became very clear that if there was an activity for which you felt a waiver should be put in place, then there should be serious consideration of whether we should be doing the activity. So I think when these student travel forms go out to the partner groups for use, that it will behoove me, certainly at the management level, to talk to the PVPs about, we tried to create a really good guideline of when to use what form, but there's considerably, I believe, going to be more attention to providing information up front before it takes place. And I know that those forms that arrive now for, some of the details around overnight travel is that people are very conscientious about putting all of the details and providing them to us. And so we created a whole chart that says what form do you use when, because there are quite a few of them, and we wanted to remove some of that confusion. So they are here, knowing that they've been looked at and scrutinized quite substantially, knowing that if, as they go out and start to be used, we may find there's glitches and we'll have to come back. But I think that, with the amount of work that's gone in, that we hope we've covered many of the issues that came up. And I must say that the group really brought forward issues around safety equipment and acknowledgement of risk, and what sort of skill levels do students have when they go kayaking? Can they swim? Have they had any experience as a kayaker, etc.? So there was really good discussions around these travel forms, and I think they will be very useful. We have them, of course, as PDFs for our use here, but for the principals and schools, we would provide them on SharePoint in Word so that they can actually create them in a word processor and do all of the work that's required. So with that, let's talk.
Thank you very much for your explanation. Anyone have any comments or questions for Sheila? Anyone wish to make a motion?
If I could make a motion that the board adopt the revised student travel consent and acknowledgement forms as presented.
Seconder?
Second.
Any discussion on that? No? Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Move receipt of the report.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I talked earlier about the legacies this board will leave to the next board, and I think getting this off the agenda, I think honestly this is like a good piece of work. Thank you, Mr. Weber. Okay, next item is, I have this right? Yep. BC School Trustees Association Provincial Council Annual General Meeting in Vancouver. Janice has kindly provided us with her own written report. I know a number of us were able to attend. Just wondering if anyone has anything they would like to say or. Green?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple comments really quickly. There were several of us who went, Sheila and Susan, Danny, myself, and I thought that, will I get his name right, Dr. Salbert from Finland, who they have the #1 education system in the world. He was really fascinated, and well, I noticed that there were a lot of differences in how they do things. For me, what was really impressive was how many things we do alike. And in particular, I talk about our district when I think of that, because our 21st century, or today's learning for tomorrow's world, I think we're doing a lot of things right there that will really benefit us, and I think you'll see that we'll move up the scale as far as our education program goes, just through our forward thinking that our staff and our trustees are having. And I think we've had some conversations. I know that Sheila and I have had some discussions about what we learned at AGM, and I thought it was really well worth it and pretty fascinating stuff. And I also went to that session on effective boards, and for me again, I thought we are being an effective board. When we came in, one of the priorities that we had as a board was to establish communication with our partner groups and stakeholders and with the community. And I think we've done that, and I think it's demonstrated by some of the good work that we have done, and we really have done a lot of good work. And I have to say I'm proud to be a member of this board and to be working with the staff that we work with, and to be a part of this district for me is pretty special, because we are doing good things, and I do believe that we are within the province for sure, and within Canada as well, probably leaders in many areas. And I'd like to commend everybody and thank everybody for your hard work and moving the district forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to new business, carbon tax funding. Sheila, you had asked for this to be on the agenda?
I did. Yeah, we received this letter. It was forwarded to us, which we often get letters, and I see that both of the letters from Conservation District are in the package, but the one that I found was interesting, and which I'd like to discuss with you, was that the Campbell River Board of Education has written to request that school districts be allowed to spend carbon offset payments on locally developed programs and initiatives to lower carbon footprints, rather than contribute these funds to the Pacific Carbon Trust, to which school districts have no access. I know that we've talked a little in passing, and I understand that in our report, maybe Ron's aware of all of this, I know Lynn was, we have a sustainability report that's done, and we have to record our carbon use and pay offsets, and currently it goes to this organization. We have been getting some funding to do energy refits and things like that through the BC Hydro and other programs. But we did talk about whether, planting trees or, doing projects here, using our schools, the community gardens and other projects would be one way to reduce those carbon offset payments that came up about our school fees, that rather than just raising money and passing it on, we would try to offset any additional carbon costs locally. And it would appear that our first step needs to be to communicate to the government that we need more flexibility around how this program works. So I would like, with your support, to direct our staff to write us another letter and send it in.
Would you like staff to write it, or would you like the board to send it?
We could write it with the staff help. It's signed by the chair in this case. But
okay, so a motion that the board write a letter with respect to carbon offsets to the government? Do you have a seconder for that? Okay, do you have anything more you want to say on that one, Sheila? No, I think this is really timely. On my tweets today that I had a quick look at, I see that actually yesterday there's an independent MLA that sits in the legislature who introduced exactly this. And they spoke about this in the legislature yesterday. Didn't seem like the government was giving it a very good reception. However, I think that if we unite and all of us join with our voices and say that please allow us to spend our carbon offsets on local projects for protecting education dollars for our own district, then I really must be to support this and sign a letter. You write a good letter, Sheila. So, anyone else?
Just for clarification, I noticed on the other two letters they have a fairly long list of copies. Is that included in your consideration to?
Yeah, I think we would send it
as broad as that?
Yeah,
okay.
and to Don.
To our local MLA.
Minister of Agriculture.
Okay, so anyone else want to close, Sheila? No. Okay, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we have some time for questions and inquiries from the public. Anyone have anything? Alrighty, let's take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? That is unanimously carried.